The Fanboy, episode 73. Hi everybody, Mario Francisco Robles, MFR here with you, and this is the 73rd edition of the Fanboy Podcast. How's everybody doing out there? We got a lot to talk about today, so I'm just going to kind of hit the ground running, you know what I'm saying? So I kind of want to start things off with a quick announcement about our next Revengers watch party. I've been discussing it on the Revengers last week and on the Fanboy Podcast last week. By the way, I'm sorry for no new Revengers this week. It's just been a scheduling calamity these last few weeks, especially Vanessa's schedule's been very difficult, and my schedule's kind of been all over the place, and Brett is exhausted from working on the Play It Loudcast and the Revengers all at once, so we just kind of needed a week off to try to recharge. We're going to try to get that show back onto a regular schedule. Remember, the new episodes are supposed to come every Tuesday afternoon. We're trying to get back to that hopefully next week. Fingers crossed, next week the Revengers will return and we'll be able to get back into a flow again. Because I know it's been tough. For those of you who enjoy that show, I'm sorry that it's like, I feel like the last 2 months it's been very hit or miss and very difficult to get all three of us together to do a show. And when that's what we want to do, that is the promise of that show. It doesn't work if it's just two of us. And it doesn't work if it's just me, because that's what this show is. So anyway, I mentioned on both shows last week that October 27th is going to be when we have our next Revengers watch party. Now I'm going to lay a few more details on you for those of you paying attention and for those of you who want to join us. It's going to be October 27th. It's going to be a two-part thing. So ordinarily, we do a movie, and then we have a little post-mortem afterward. We've done that ever since Justice League. We did it at Justice League, we did it at Ready Player One, we did it at Avengers Infinity War. So that tradition will continue. We're going to see Halloween this time. That's going to be the movie that we watch. If you want to come watch it with myself and Brett and other members of the Revenge of the Fans community, Chris Lasanti is going to be there from the Fanboy Garage. Aaron Verola is going to be there from the Fanboy Garage. We got a bunch of people coming in for this. I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to wrangle in Rob Morera and Jeremy Scully. And, so if you want to get to meet some of the New York-based crew of Revenge of the Fans, see a movie with us, hang out, let's talk about it afterward, you are more than welcome to join us. So October 27th, we're going to be seeing Halloween at a theater to be determined in Queens. I'm shooting for the Midway in Forest Hills, and I'm shooting for a 7 o'clock screening, but as of now, they haven't announced ticket sales yet. They haven't gone on sale yet for the new Halloween movie. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be picking up like 1 or 2 rows. I'm just going to try to buy like 1 or 2 full rows of seats, kind of like we did at Infinity War, and then you are able to purchase tickets through me to come and participate in the watch party that night. Now, what makes October 27th extra special though is we're going to see Halloween. It's going to be Halloween weekend. So, first of all, wear a costume if you'd like. I'm going to be showing up in my full Michael Myers gear. So, it's just, I sometimes I'm a little extra. But yes, I'm going to come with the jumper and the mask and the whole thing. So feel free to wear a costume if you want to come and enjoy the festivities. We're going to be having a good time with it. And also, what makes it extra, extra special is that if you want to do the second part of the night, here's what the second part of the night is. At 11 p.m. that night, in Elmhurst, Queens, easily accessible through mass transit, just like the theater is going to be, my band, The Boom Section, is going to be playing its return show. We have a big Halloween show planned at a really cool venue called Blackthorn 51. Years ago, when we used to perform very regularly, that was like our home away from home. And now it's going to be our return show. And I'm very, very excited to do it. We're all going to be, the rest of the band's going to be dressed up. We're going to be singing and dancing and partying and having fun the whole night long. So if you want to come and see the movie and hang out with us afterward for a little bit, then leave. By all means, do that. But if you want to come to do that and the concert, I think it's going to be a very special night. And we're also going to have some fun Revenge of the Fans merch for sale for those of you who come to the show. Maybe even a couple of freebies to throw at you. And that's it. And the prices are going to range. If you're going to do just the movie, it's $20. If you want to do the movie and the show, it's $40. So it's really not going to break the bank no matter what. And you're going to get a ton of entertainment for it. So it's up to you, your call. I will have more details. We're going to print them on the site as the date draws nearer. But just for now, put that on your calendar, put that in your radar. If you are a New York tri-state area listener, supporter, reader of the Fanboy, the Revengers, the Play It Loudcast, the Fanboy Garage, RevengeOfTheFans.com, any of these things, and you want to come and see a really cool movie with us, and then perhaps go and, if you're curious about how my band is and stuff, it's going to be a really cool night. I'm just telling you right now, I'm very, very excited for it. And I would love to have all of you there. So please consider it. But now I also want to thank those of you who've been really, taking my advice about the reviews. I got like 2 or 3 more reviews in just the last couple of weeks, and they're all 5 stars. So I'm going to go right now, before we get into news and all the other stuff, I want to just, read these reviews and thank those of you who've taken the time, because it really does make a difference. At the end of the episode, I'm going to let you know a way in which these reviews can be very, very important and very, very vital to growing the show and getting some great caliber guests on here for you. Because, we'll get to that later. But for now, I got a 5-star review from Manolo Almeida. I like that name. I'm going to say it that spicy because it's Manolo Almeida. It's good. Okay. Manolo said, I stumbled upon the Fanboy Podcast due to the legendary Mark Waid retweeting the episode of his interview, and being a Wally West Flash fan forever who treasures Wade's run as the definitive run on The Flash, just had to check it out. Excellent job. Nice sounding voice. Well, thank you. And then I figure out this guy has Puerto Rican roots. No wonder la sandunga of this guy. Love it. A new regular listener from Puerto Rico, Manuel Almeida. Manuel, muchísimas gracias. I really, thanks for taking the time, and I'm glad that the Mark Waid interview brought you on board. This train ain't stopping anytime soon, baby. Then the next one's real short. The next one comes from a user called Student PHY. Student fee? No idea. But it says, the dude is passionate. Long-time follower. Really enjoy this podcast. Short and sweet. I like it. I'll take them 5 stars. So thank you to everyone. I've gotten 6 new 5-star reviews in just the last 10 days or so. So keep them coming. They really do make a difference. And I want to just thank you from the bottom of my heart. But okay, enough of all the housekeeping nonsense. Let's talk some geek stuff, shall we? So a couple of big things happened this week. The main ones that we're going to talk about center on Birds of Prey and Captain Marvel, because that trailer landed the other morning. So let's just kind of start real quick with Birds of Prey, because, right now it's the big talk of the town. Last night, The Hollywood Reporter released an exclusive report citing several very interesting candidates for the next Birds of Prey film. And included on there, you have Mary Elizabeth Winstead. You've also got Gugu Mbatha Raw. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. But you've also got, other names being considered for Black Canary are Journey Smollett Bell and the singer Janelle Monáe, who's also acted in quite a few things as well. She's not just a singer. There's also Kristen Milioti, Justina Machado. These are people who are up for, I believe, and there's Roberta Colindres, who are up for the role of Renee Montoya. Just a lot of interesting names. And the one thing I want to say for now is don't get too attached to any one of these just yet, because this is not the only round of testing they're going to do. There's going to be another round of tests with Margot Robbie, I'm told, in about a week or two. So right now, remember, these things, casting on this scale is not just so simple as let's find a cool person who, fans might like, and then let's just put them in a suit and send them off to work. These kinds of casting things, especially where it's an ensemble piece like this, where the team really has to mesh and the chemistry has to be just right, the tests are monumentally important. So right now, it's not just about finding the right name or the right talent or whatever. There's a lot of other things to factor in. So right now, these are very exciting names. I would say since the film is set to start filming on January 14th, which is not that far away, we're going to be getting the official castings relatively soon, but we're not there just yet. We're not there just yet. So don't start taking any of these names to the bank. For all we know, the final lineup could look completely different. We don't know. Or it could be exactly this. Who knows? But for right now, that's all I kind of want to caution you. I also want to talk a little bit about, it's been brought to my attention that some people are freaking out about the races of these actresses. And, listen, there's always going to be idiots out there. There's always going to be ignorant, racist, myopic, just morons who don't seem to understand what the real priorities should be when casting a role. The people who think that skin color somehow matters at all for any of this. And all I'll say is this, personally, I guess I'm just very lucky. Maybe I'm just very fortunate. I grew up on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, surrounded by every kind of race and creed you can imagine. In my class, in my classrooms in elementary school, I was learning from kindergarten on that everyone just comes from different places and it doesn't matter. I had my friend Kenny Wong, my Chinese friend. I had Odysseus, who was this epic, African-American kid with that name. And I'm like, I wish I was Odysseus, but that's a side tangent. But I grew up around people of all kinds. I can't relate to people who get so bent out of shape about race and thinking that one is better than the other, or just because a character's always been drawn one way, that means they always have to be, they always have to be presented that way. For me, it's much more important just how they portray the character, the acting. Do I believe this person in this role? Do they help me take that little, trip into that fantasy world where I could suspend disbelief and believe that this character is real? That's all that really matters at the end of the day. And I kind of want to just, put out there to all of you that you are in control of who you allow to live inside your brain. You are in control of the real estate up here. Nobody else is. So if there are people out there having ugly, nasty conversations about this, and you feel yourself getting pulled into a debate with someone about skin color, and it's starting to irk you, just remember, you control that. You are the one who decides. You are the real estate agent for the property up here. So if you don't want to deal with those people, if you don't even want to consider that these kinds of people exist, or just give them the time of day, just do what I do. Ignore it. Ever since I stopped reading the comment sections on articles, ever since I stopped reading the replies on articles posted on Twitter, it's been a huge gift to my sanity. Because to go and read these things and allow all of this negativity to occupy space in your precious brain, you're kind of bringing it on yourself. And I thought about that because my friend, he's a sweetheart, Adam, my man. He's a critic for Revenge of the Fans. He also has his own podcast. I've mentioned it before, Multiverse Musings, a DC Comics podcast, and I'm going to be showing up on that fairly soon. But, he messaged me concerned this morning, the racist trolls are out in full force and whatever, and it's disgusting. And it's listen, I know it is. It absolutely is disgusting. But don't give those people power. You just can't. By listening to it, by participating, you are allowing that toxicity into your system. Keep it out. Just speak to like-minded people. Don't pay any mind to that, because at the end of the day, what you think about, what you obsess about, what you feel is up to you. So don't allow anything else to sort of hijack your thoughts and pull something you're excited about in a negative direction. That's all. Be a better gatekeeper. I'm not saying this just to you, Adam, anyone in general. You out there, be a better gatekeeper for what you allow in here. Because up here is very, very special. Up here is where all the magic happens. And if you're allowing others to pollute that time and to take up and use your energy getting lost chasing your tail in a negative conversation about ignorant nonsense, after a while, you're the one who's culpable because you're the one allowing it to take over your thoughts. So just something to think about. But, all right, so let's talk a little Captain Marvel. Because that was the big thing, right? There was the big trailer reveal on, I think that was what, Tuesday, I want to say, Wednesday? I have no idea when it was. But, so the Captain Marvel trailer came out, and, I've spoken before on this show that it's not a character I know that well, or I'm particularly invested in. So that's why, like, when they released those, like, stills 2 weeks ago, and, like, we're going to break the internet, I'm like, no, you're not. But even for me personally, I'm like, I'm going to need a lot more than just some still images to get all excited about this. I said I was going to need a trailer. So now the trailer's here. What's the verdict? At least for me. I was very pleasantly surprised. I really was. The main thing that caught me overall was the way the trailer was structured, the way the story is being presented. It had a lot more intrigue and a lot more mystery than I'm used to in your typical Marvel Studios movie. I feel like more often than not, the Marvel trailers tend to be like, all right, here's a taste of the plot. Here's your hero or heroes. Here's some cool imagery. And then at the end, after we flash the title, we'll go back to the movie for about 7 seconds to show you a joke. And then it ends. They kind of have like that formula, and there's generally not a lot of like built-in mystery. The general like tone and tenor of most Marvel trailers are, come have a good time with us. This is going to be cool. Just watch this kind of fun story unfold. This is going to be a good time. This one though, like I found myself just wondering all of this, like the imagery and the storyline. I'm like, trying to figure out who she really is, where she comes from, what's up with her memories. Look at the juxtaposition of like it's a 90s period piece with a fish out of tail with a fish out of water sort of conceit where she's here trying to figure stuff out and all that. But then there's also all of this like cosmic epicness going on with the Kree and all that stuff. Like there was just a lot of just like, I really need to see this movie in order to figure out what exactly is going on here. I don't, this doesn't seem predictable. This doesn't seem like I can just look at the trailer and tell you what the movie is. I'm sure I could probably piece together the general formula, the general structure, but in terms of getting answers to the main questions of the trailer, like I'm going to actually have to see the movie to see that. And it's been a while since I've seen a Marvel trailer that got me feeling like I don't really know what's going on, so I better see this to figure that out. So I really appreciated that. I really appreciated it didn't have the joke at the end. And in general, the overall tone of the movie, it seems like it has much more in common with Black Panther and with Avengers Infinity War in terms of these new, bolder, more recent Marvel Studios movies that show us that they're not afraid to be a little more grand, to be a little more layered, to be a little more complex, to have a hero that, maybe you can't just instantly look at and go, oh, I know what kind of type you are. It gives me hope. It gives me hope that Marvel Studios and the MCU and Kevin Feige, that they're really open to telling stories that are, that hit a lot deeper, that are a little more intense than some of like the action comedies that they were known for a while, because it's no secret. The Marvel movies that have really connected with me are the ones that aren't afraid to reach for your heart and really kind of like, just tell a really deep story about a character that's going through some incredible trials and tribulations. That's why, my favorite Marvel movies are, Winter Soldier and Captain America, even the first one, the first Avenger. I even really enjoyed Incredible Hulk, which I've said before. I know I'm like one of the few who will defend that movie to the death, but I will. I love it. I'll fight you. Come on. I'm right here. Come on, Cletus. Black Panther, even Spider-Man Homecoming, which I know was a little bit, it was still kind of an action comedy, but it had some moments there that really grabbed me by the throat. And in general, it seemed to try to understand the psychology of who Peter Parker is, what makes him tick, and why he was kind of perfect to be the one who got bit by that spider, because no one else could be Spider-Man but Peter Parker. So yes, those are my favorite kinds of Marvel movies. And Marvel seems to be heading more in that direction. This is going to be the 21st movie. I'd say maybe only 5 or 6 out of those 21 movies are the kind that really kind of take the material very seriously. But I'm glad that Captain Marvel seems to be one of those. I skipped Ant-Man and the Wasp entirely, but Captain Marvel, I'm going to see on opening night. You can count me in. They've got my money. Whoever edited that trailer, good job. You got me. I'm in. Now, don't make the mistake in one of these future trailers of over-explaining the plot. I like not knowing a lot about it. So I just hope that they keep that. I hope that they keep that central sort of like, what's going on? And she punches that old lady in the face. Like, it's very rare that Marvel really kind of makes you go, what is going on here? So kudos to them. The Captain Marvel trailer really did sell me. Now let's talk a little bit about a guy, I don't know if you know this, but, I kind of like Superman. I don't know if you can tell. But, there was a conversation happening over on the Twitter today that even though it was on a thread of mine, I didn't participate. I just kind of lurked. I just kind of watched to see how it unfolded. And one of the things that came up, I don't want to get into who said what, but one of the general ideas was, have people fallen out of love with Superman? Is that perhaps one of the reasons that Warner Brothers is sort of like dragging its heels on figuring everything out with Henry and even aside from Henry, they don't seem to be in a rush to like recast and reboot and keep moving. Unlike with Batman, they're already, they're already next year, they're going to be filming the next Batman movie. They're not wasting any time there. But when it comes to Superman, there's this weird sort of tentativeness. And so one of the things that was being discussed was this idea that maybe audiences have fallen out of love with Superman, or that the audience, or that the studio sees it that way. And I just find that patently absurd. I really do. I don't think audiences have fallen out of love with Superman. I think they just haven't been given a Superman they could fall in love with in a very long time. And this is, this goes back to 2006. This goes back to Superman Returns, where, the Superman there, he was a very sort of like melancholy and quiet and sort of unassuming Superman. He was not like the traditional mold. Brandon Routh played him. Yes, to a certain degree, he was trying to mimic Reeve. But remember, Reeve also had a very winning charm about him. Reeve knew how to like convey multiple things at once, whereas Routh's version of Superman, was much more like tentative and quiet and timid and kind of like withdrawn in a way emotionally. So that Superman is not exactly one that fans grew up loving and wanting to like, it wasn't one they could rally behind, And then, with Man of Steel, we were introduced to a Superman that was more, a Clark who was more unsure of himself, and a Superman who was more of like, and I hate to say this, but in my guesstimation, a Superman who was more of just like a generic brooding action hero type, rather than the charming, friendly, inspirational figure he's most commonly known as. And by the way, I want to just quickly circle back to last week. I know I went off on a tangent last week. I'm not going to do that this week. But I left out one vital thing that I thought was missing from the Zod kill. And then we're going to move right on. I meant to say this, but that's the thing. When you kind of record these things without any notes, you forget. And then afterward, you kick yourself and you go, oh, I meant to say this. What would have made the Zod kill more impactful for me, because remember, I didn't have a problem with it. I was fine with him killing Zod. I just didn't think it packed as much of a punch as it could have. What would have made it pack more of a punch and perhaps added to the overall sympathetic nature of this Superman and made him seem more like the Superman that we know and love was if we had seen him trying not to kill Zod. Had there been a concerted effort to show him trying to find every other which way to end this conflict short of murdering him, that would have added to the drama, and it would have made it that much more tragic and that much more powerful when he actually did the neck snap. But how was I supposed to know that he wasn't trying to kill him from the outset? You know, that entire battle is just them beating the crap out of each other and hitting each other through buildings, and it's just brutality. How am I supposed to know that Superman isn't trying to kill Zod? It's never made clear in the movie. Remember, this is a new Superman. So while I may bring my own inherent knowledge of who Superman is to the theater, and I know, well, Superman's probably trying to find a peaceful way to resolve this, or fighting Zod is not his first priority. He wants to figure out how to stop Zod, how to reason with Zod. You know, the movie itself doesn't communicate that. All we see him is beating the snot out of him, talking a little smack, and then beating more and more snot out of him once they meet up again in Metropolis. So to me, like, that was the big thing. Like, you know, it takes more to be a hero than beating up a bad guy. It's that simple. So had there been more to that than simply him beating the crap out of Zod the whole time, then the next snap might have felt more powerful and more people might have been more okay with it. If they saw, wow, you know, he was trying his absolute best to avoid doing this and he had to make a tragic decision. Wow, that's amazing. And I'm sure he's going to grow from this. And he's so much, you know, he's going to become that Superman we know and love. This is his first day on the job. But he already had to learn one of the most harsh lessons that Superman will ever have to learn. This is beautiful. You know, I may not agree with him killing Zod, but this gives him some place to go. But in the movie, you don't really see that. You know, if you as a viewer want to fill in those blanks yourself, you're free to do so. But the movie as presented just shows us a Kal-El who is beating the snot out of Zod the whole time. And for all we know, he's trying to kill him from the outset. It's never made clear what his intentions are. Therefore, when he kills him, it's neither shocking or particularly powerful. Because they're like, okay, good, you finally got him in a place where you could snap his neck. You know, good for you. You pulled it off. Anyway, that was another tangent. That movie, I can talk about Man of Steel every day for the rest of my life. But I won't. I'm done. I promise. I pinky swear. Pinky swear. I don't know. For those of you watching on YouTube, I'm pinky swearing with you that I will not talk about Man of Steel anymore today. But the point is, what I was getting at was that whether it was the Bryan Singer version or the Zack Snyder version, audiences haven't really been given a Superman that they could really sink their teeth into and love and empathize with and really fall in love with. They just, you know, so that's why to say that audiences have fallen out of love with him, I think that's a misdiagnosis. You know, it's incredibly frustrating. You know, I think of it like that. I think of it like imagine you own a coffee shop, or you open a coffee shop. And when you first open it, you only serve coffee that's very sort of mild. You know, those blonde roasts. You know, mild, sort of watery, nondescript coffees. And of course, while some people like that sort of thing, there's a whole mass of people who don't, who want something a little stronger, a little darker, a little more full-bodied, something that makes the hair on the back of their neck stand up, maybe like a Café Bustelo. But then, so when you realize that, you now start offering the stronger stuff. You know, you throw out the weak stuff and you start selling the really, really strong dark brewed stuff. But the same thing happens. Some people love that, but a lot of people, you know, want the milder stuff. You know, this stuff is just too strong. It's not pleasurable. It's too bitter. They have to add too much sugar and cream just to make it palatable. It's not working for them. So you, as the coffee shop owner, instead of going, so I've gone into two different extremes. So what I need to do is offer something that's more in the middle and maybe just kind of offer a general variety. Instead of doing that, you just decide I'm not selling coffee anymore. You know what I mean? Like that is what's seems to be going on. Like if Warner Brothers really has like their takeaway from the way people responded to Superman Returns and the way people responded to Snyder's Superman, if their takeaway is, audiences just don't like Superman anymore, so we should move on for a while, I think it's just completely asinine, a complete ridiculous misdiagnosis of the problem. Just give them a Superman they can love. find a writer who, you get someone like a Grant Morrison or someone like, I mean, who I don't even know who did it, but whoever wrote the Death of Superman animated movie. I'm hearing they nailed it. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't personally vouch. But you get someone like whoever wrote that, who apparently found that balance between Superman, the action hero, Superman, the sympathetic figure, showing him, be heroic and powerful and lay down the law when he has to, but also caring about the people of Metropolis when he has to. This is all the feedback I've been getting about that movie. You find someone who has a track record of writing that quintessential balanced Superman, let them make a movie, and I have a feeling you won't have to worry about whether or not audiences love him anymore, because they just will. Instead of giving these weird, all extreme versions, either very gentle, doesn't want to lift a finger to punch anyone, very kind of nice and somber Superman, or the action hero who's flying through, skyscrapers and snapping necks and brooding and is super intense. Like, those are both extremes. There's something in the middle that you are missing, Warner Brothers. So I don't know that this is the case, because I know that earlier this year you were high on the idea of trying to get Superman back out there before all this crap with Cavill happened. But if there's any part of the decision-making brass there at Warner Brothers that thinks that Superman is the problem, you are out of your mind. And all right, so while we're in this space talking about Superman, let's talk about his cousin Supergirl a little bit, because something I didn't talk about last week, but I indirectly spoke about the product of, is this idea that I don't know what's going on with the shared continuity anymore, the shared universe concept over at DC, and that's why I'm trying to mentally prepare myself for the idea that it may be on its way out. Because I don't know, it's hard to make sense of things. Because last week's rumors about what Supergirl is going to be centered on and when it is apparently set in the 1970s, if that's true, I don't see how Man of Steel, like, it undoes things, doesn't it? Part of what made Man of Steel special was this was a world without superheroes. He was the first Kryptonian to show up with his red cape and his S on his chest and be Superman. If there had already been a Supergirl in the world, how would Man of Steel play out? Like, it didn't make sense. It would no longer make sense. And that's why when I hear about the Supergirl thing, it really makes me start thinking that DC is heading in this direction where, like, they're not really doing the shared universe thing anymore. Where certain things will continue, obviously. Birds of Prey and Suicide Squad 2, they all seem to be picking up on the threads planted, or the seeds that were planted in Suicide Squad. Batman, for all intents and purposes, it can connect. Because since they're kind of taking it back, since they're rewinding the timeline, they can sort of decide later on whether or not he links up to the Ben Affleck Batman that we know. Even if he's not played by Ben Affleck anymore, but in terms of, like, continuity, like if you have Jeremy Irons in there, if you have J.K. Simmons in there, you could sort of make it like, yes, it's a soft reboot, but yes, it sort of connects, and then they can decide in the sequels how much it connects, But when you hear about Supergirl, and also like when you hear about some of the things that were coming out at Comic-Con about how Wonder Woman 1984 apparently kind of plays by its own rules to a certain extent. It almost feels like it's a wholly original movie that's not linked to those other ones. Because, you see her running around in public. You see her being Wonder Woman, living a public life out surrounded by people. And wasn't the whole thing that she was like in hiding from humanity for a century? So how does the Wonder World 1984 storyline take place in such an open public way if she was apparently in hiding the whole time? Like, it really feels like Walter Hamada has, like, unchained all the filmmakers, which is great, by the way. But he's unchained all the filmmakers and said, listen, keep what you want, discard what you don't, and have at it. And in that way, it does seem more like the Fox thing. Right? I've spoken about that before, how Warner Brothers doesn't seem interested in doing the MCU model. they do seem more interested in doing the Fox thing, where certain things connect, other things don't. Sometimes you'll get these flat out contradictions where you're like, but how was Stryker, 30 in this movie and 55 in that movie, but they only take place 5 years apart? Like, there's so many different things you could do if you nitpick through through the Fox X-Men canon that, DC's opening itself up to with this sort of approach. So it's hard to make heads or tails of it. But I know a lot of you are trying to find correlations between Joaquin Phoenix's Joker and the Matt Reeves Batman. Because I guess, it's logical. This Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie looks like it's going to be pretty excellent. Yeah, I don't know. I know not everyone feels that way. A lot of you are still on the fence. You don't get why they would do this. You think Joker works best without an origin and yada, yada, yada. Listen, I get it. And the only way the whole thing makes any sense to you is if it somehow links to the greater Batman mythology. But folks, they really are doing this thing with the Elseworld. From everything I'm hearing, this Joker thing is going to take place in its own closed off corner without any real chance of a crossover. Certain other thing. Remember that spoiler that I found out about a few weeks ago that I'm not going to be reporting on? Just rest assured, that spoiler tells me pretty much very, very, in a very ironclad black and white sort of way, this thing is not going to be connected to the main canon. It's just not. So, because later on today, I'm going to get into some questions from listeners, and I know that's one of the questions that's coming in. And in general, after last week's episode, there was a lot of questions about the continuity and why I seem to be doing this about face on the whole idea of it. And it's because, the writing seems to be on the wall that they're going to be launching the Elseworld label, but even the stuff that's not under the Elseworld label, which may or may not be called DC Black label, even anything that's considered like main DC, the connections are going to have way more in common with the Fox X-Men movies than they do with the Marvel movies. And I guess you all just need to start making peace with that, okay? Because especially if stuff like the Supergirl thing is true, you're going to have to just accept certain things that, it's a strange situation. It really is. And it's hard for me to try to put a positive spin on it. But, at this point, all I can kind of hope for is that the scoop is wrong. Whoever came up with that, whatever source gave that information was wrong or only had half the information or they misunderstood. Maybe she landed in the 70s, but she didn't emerge until later on. I don't know. I'm trying to make sense of it all, but we also really have to keep in mind that when it comes to scoops and all this kind of stuff, especially when it comes to DC, things are always changing. That's why it's hard to report on this stuff. And for you as fans, I'm sure it gets dizzying. It gets very confusing. I get it. And it's because things are constantly in a state of flux. I mean, just look at everything that's happened since Justice League. Think about earlier this year. Earlier this year, we knew we were getting a Nightwing movie and we were getting a Batgirl movie. And then what happened? Joss Whedon left Batgirl, and now Batgirl, while still in development, it's no longer on the immediate horizon like it seemed at some point last year and early this year. You had Chris McKay on Twitter talking about how, on Valentine's Day, we're going to have a big surprise or a cool update on Nightwing for the fans. And then what happened? Valentine's Day kind of came and went, and slowly but surely Chris McKay went on to other projects, and now Nightwing seems to be on the back burner. So, look no further than that for proof of, how much has changed this year. Things are constantly in a state of flux. With Superman, I've already pointed out how things have been a roller coaster. When it comes to Matt Reeves' Batman, all the different conflicting rumors we've heard about, is he going to be the same age as Batman, as Ben Affleck? Is he going to be younger? Is it going to be a reboot, or is it going to be a soft reboot? There's so many different things that we just don't know that seem to be in an active state of flux. That's why you have to take everything, no matter who's reporting it, It doesn't matter if you trust them or don't trust them. It doesn't matter if they've been right 99.9% of the time in the past or they're a very hit or miss scooper. You know, no matter what, you have to take everything, not necessarily with a grain of salt in the sense that it might be bogus, but you have to take it with a grain of salt in that things might change tomorrow. Things, you know, when it comes to DC right now, since they're in this stage of rebuilding and rebirth and trying to figure out exactly what their future looks like, that makes it so that even the stuff that I write with such, you know, I write to you with nothing but good intentions, and I'm sometimes 1,000% confident in what I'm sharing with you. Even my stuff, like, you know, you just always kind of have to take everything and go, that's something interesting to consider. We'll see if it pans out. But right now, it's like trying to report on sand falling out of a bag. Like, that's how it feels sometimes. Right now, it's like, oh, there's just a little bit of sand coming out of the bag. The bag seems to be healing itself. And, oh, wait, that was last week. This week, the hole is blown open, and now there's just a lot more sand coming out, and they're refilling it at the top, so it seems to be a never-ending cascade of sand. Like, I don't even know if that's a good comparison. But in other words, it's fluid. It's constantly moving. It's constantly evolving. What was true last week is not true this week. That sand thing was really stupid. Let's forget I said that. But, you know, it's just, it's hard. So this Supergirl thing and everything we're hearing, you know, just right now I need everyone to please just be patient with what you hear. No matter who's reporting it, no matter how much you like the reporter, no matter what their track record is, take everything you hear, file it away, and then we'll just see what happens, because stuff is changing every single day. Okay? And also, just a quick note on, you know, on like, for me, just so you guys kind of know where I'm coming from when I give you guys bochinche and exclusive rumors and, you know, and insights or scoops or whatever the heck I'm giving you it is on a given week. You know, remember, in the blogosphere, there is no hierarchy. There is no set of rules. There's no one to enforce who shares what, how, when, and where. There is no, you know, policing of what we talk about here. So everyone kind of has their own way of approaching this information and how they share it. You know, for example, at the trades, at the Hollywood Reporter, at Variety, it's very, very serious business. They probably hear all the same stuff I do, but they just have a different system than I do. For them, unless it's like they've had it verified by 3 different sources, whether, you know, the actor, a producer on the film, and a manager for that actor, or whatever, you know, like, they have to cross-check everything to a painstaking degree before their editors allow them to run something. That's why, like, the thing last week with Boris Kitt and Superman and Henry Cavill and all that, if he ran that, it's because he was told that and he was able to confirm that from more than one other place. This isn't like somebody text him, yo, Boris, Cavill's out, and then he wrote a story about it. There's a lot more to it than that. And in general, you know, you just have to keep that in mind. Because, like, for me, when I share a scoop, it's different because I'm a fan just like you. Yes, I've been doing this for 5 years, so I have access to some information. I've made some good connections and some friends who give me information that is perhaps a little closer to the situation than you are. But when I share it, it's more so like I'm like that kid in the schoolyard who heard something really cool and runs over to tell his friends about it. That's kind of what I do most of the time. When I hear cool stuff from people I trust, yes, I still cross-reference it, and there's things, I have my own filtration process, but a lot of times my intention, my goal, what I'm really doing is, it's the equivalent of, hey guys, want to hear this cool thing I heard? I'm not trying to, like, change your life or rock your world or give you, you know, news that's going to give the Hollywood Reporter a run for its money. No. I hear cool stuff. I'm one of you. I'm invested in this stuff from the vantage point of a fan just like you. So when I share stuff with you, it's like us amongst friends discussing some cool stuff I heard. You know what I mean? So keep that in mind also. I've been wanting to talk about that because, you know, things get misconstrued, things get confused out there, and out there on these interwebs, people love to like take and twist things. You know, I had this conversation, not even a conversation, but there was a situation last week where I wrote this very carefully worded report about Kit Harington, about the fact that there was a producer who was interested in Kit Harington for Batman, and so they ordered up some digital mock-ups of him in the cowl. And, you know, I don't think it necessarily went anywhere because that was months ago and we've heard nothing since. I just think it's a cool thing to discuss. And that's exactly what I mean by this kind of stuff. This is just it's almost like water cooler chat. It's just interesting stuff to consider. So that's who they're looking at. It kind of shows you where their mind is at, how out of the box, how inside the box they're looking, what age ranges they're looking at, what the different philosophies seem to be backstage, behind the scenes, I should say. Sorry, my old theater self just came out with the backstage stuff. You know, I find that sort of stuff interesting. But so I share it with you, and then people run articles saying Kit Harington's going to replace Ben Affleck as Batman. And I'm like, what? I didn't say that. And then you get people having to like running to like try to debunk me. Like, oh, his manager says that this isn't true. It's like, God, I didn't say that. If you read what I wrote, if you read where it came from, and you read how I already even said it was just an idea that people involved were looking into, they were kicking the tires on the idea, you know, I guess I just feel the need to clarify this stuff because I know, you know, we're in this age of everyone wants more information, you know, louder and faster and you know, more constant than ever before. But just remember, you know, different people have different parameters for what they share. You've got to take everything you hear with a semblance of patience. And right now, especially when it comes to DC, everything's changing. So just be mindful of that, okay? And something, you know, that I personally want to be more mindful of is, you know, just deciding, I might hold things back more, you know, from time to time because, you know, I'm learning, you know, remember, I'm fairly new to the scooping stuff. It hasn't even been a year since I've been doing the scoop stuff. Back when I was at Latino Review, I left all the scooping up to Kelvin Chavez and Humberto, you know, El Maimbe. You know, I kind of let them do all the scooping stuff. I was just there to kind of provide my analysis and news and all that, you know, like just pass along news and all that sort of stuff. I was never the scoop guy. So I'm really new to this, and, you know, it's a work in progress. Because sometimes I report on something only to find out that, you know, it's already changed 7 times since I heard about it. And I really just reported about a very early idea. Or maybe I reported on something when they were still in the early days of this. Had I just waited a few more months, you know, they might have arrived at something a lot more finished, a lot more final, a lot closer to accurate to what it ends up being in theaters. You know, so I'm still kind of learning. You know, I'm still kind of figuring out what is worth sharing, what isn't. Honestly, when that stuff like the Kit Harington stuff happens, it makes me want to just not bother because, you know, I'm just trying to share some cool stuff with my friends. You know, it gets so serious and it gets so warped that I'm just like, all right, maybe I should just, you know, hold off on sharing anything all that insider with you. Because if everything I write's going to get psychoanalyzed and, you know, I don't know if it's even fun or worth it anymore. So, you know, you guys let me know what you want me to do. But right now, you know, I try to just share stuff with you like your friend. Like, I heard something pretty cool. Keep an eye out for this. Let's see what happens. But if that for you kind of like if it plays with your emotions too much, if it gets your hopes up for stuff, and that if it doesn't pan out, like remember with Superman that happened, you know, earlier this year, both myself and Collider was hearing all over the place that Superman was a big priority, and now here we are without any Superman movie to talk about, and it looks like he's going into some prolonged state of development hell. You know, so like on some level, I feel bad for getting people's hopes up, you know, but at the time it was real. But, you know, I was trying to report on an impossible situation. Impossible because it's constantly evolving. So, I'm constantly trying to refine my process, trying to learn. I'm not by any means perfect at what I do. But I hope you guys know my heart's in the right place. So anyway, I don't know. I think I said all I have to say there. So now I'm just going to kind of move on to my next subject because it's an important one for me. Do you know how special you are? Like, I mean it. Like, do you know by watching this? And I don't mean to me. By watching this, you are communicating that you're someone like me, that you are a deep, passionate, very invested fan. There's no like casual fan out there who's watching this show or listening to this show who has any semblance of who I am or what I'm talking about. The people who follow me, who visit Revenge of the Fans, who do all this kind of stuff, you're the special ones. You're the ones who go that little bit deeper. Do you know how rare it is to find someone who cares as deeply as you do about movies and television shows and comic books and all that sort of stuff? Do you know how rare that is? Like fans, truly passionate fans, the ones who sink their teeth into a property, merge it into their DNA, and will pursue how to get more of what they love. Like those people are beautiful. You're beautiful. Do you realize what it means to feel things the way that you do? Do you know that like many people out there, they see a movie or whatever type of medium, and the best they can come up with after is, that was pretty good. And then they shrug it off and they move on. It was just this fleeting bit of entertainment, a fun little way to kill a couple hours. And that's all it is for them because they're just wired differently. Meanwhile, for us, a movie can be a religious experience. It's like going to church. We go on a ride. We feel all these things. We connect ourselves to the characters and the stories. And that's what makes us so special. It's that we're all participating in a collective dream. Because a movie, a TV series, a song, that all came from somebody else's heart, someone else's mind. Someone else woke up one morning with a story they just had to tell. And they wrote it out and they put together a team to create it. Then they got people to invest time and money to bring it to life. They filled it with their hopes and their dreams about a story or a character or a message they were dying to share. And they put it out into the world. And then you found it. And you made it part of you. Though it wasn't your dream, you have this magical gift within you where you can leave this reality and join them in the dream they created. That takes a special kind of person. Not everyone has the ability to sort of leave themselves and actually connect with the consciousness of those around them in some sort of shared experience like that. It's incredibly powerful. So don't ever take yourself for granted because your ability to empathize, connect, imagine, pretend, sync up your psyche with someone else's stories and characters is a kind of magic. That's what makes the movie-going experience so powerful. If you think about it, you sit in a theater surrounded by a bunch of strangers. And then when all the lights go down, we all go somewhere together. And if the film is good and we're all on the edges of our seats laughing, crying, jumping back out of fear, we're all participating in a collective dream together. And the best storytellers out there are the ones who can achieve that. The ones who can take a story and tell a story that's so universally true that millions of people around the world who don't even speak the same language can lose themselves for it in that story for hours at a time. That's also like why things get so like fiery and personal for us. When it isn't even about a specific story, by the way, even when it's just like a character. A character who's appeared in countless stories across multiple mediums spanning decades and decades, whether it's Sherlock Holmes, Robin Hood, Zorro, Superman, Romeo and Juliet, like these characters become fixtures in our lives. Friends in our homes and in our hearts. Isn't that wild to think about? Like, Siegel and Schuster, for example, two kids from Cleveland. They created a character that would go on to inspire millions of people around the world for over 80 years now. I hope the power of that is not lost on you. You have the power to create immortals. You do. Siegel and Schuster each passed away a long time ago, and yet they live on forever because of people like you, because of people like me, because of fans. Fans are inherently beautiful things, especially the ones who feel things the way that we do. So don't ever discount that. You're awesome. And before you go and attack another fan of some other property for loving what they love, try to remind yourself that we're all part of the same tribe of special people. You know, the ones who can go to that great rarefied place in our hearts and in our imaginations. You know, we all have a lot more in common than we have apart once you are a passionate fan. Whether you're Marvel or DC or Doctor Who or Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever your particular brand is, we all have a lot more in common by the mere fact that we're able to feel these deep feelings and create immortal stories and create immortal characters through these shared experiences together. You know, so that idea for me of the collective dream is a big one. And I just hope that you all realize that you're part of that. You are part of what makes all of this special. That's why my site is not like Revenge of the Movies or Revenge of the Executives. It's Revenge of the Fans. You know, it's about us. We are the special ones. We are the God makers. We create the immortals by where we invest our love and our passion and our attention. I think that makes us pretty cool. That's why I'm here to talk to more of you and make friends with more of you and bring news and insight and information to you guys, because I think we're pretty damn special. And if you're watching this, I want you to remember that about yourself. Not everyone can feel things the way that you do. And the fact that you can makes you pretty magical. And when you find something, a piece of entertainment that takes you there, be it a book, be it a song, be it a TV show, anything, love it, nurture it, really think about it. Take a moment to realize how lucky you were to experience that. You know, because earlier this week, I got to experience Life Itself. You know, it's a new movie from Dan Fogelman, the creator of This Is Us. He wrote and directed this film. It stars Oscar Isaac and Olivia Wilde and Olivia Cook and Antonio Banderas and Annette Bening and Mandy Patinkin. A lot of amazing talent involved. But I realized, that movie wrecked me. I've been thinking about it all week. Ever since I went to the screening. I think it was on Tuesday. I'm still sort of coming down from all of the different things that it made me feel and the ways in which it connected me to my own thoughts and fears and insecurities. And it just got me thinking about the fact that, those of us who go here, it's like a blessing and a curse, isn't it? When you can be feeling a certain kind of way and then a song comes on and it just takes you on a complete emotional journey into places you hadn't thought about in a long time. It's beautiful and it can be rough, but that's kind of life, and that's why Life Itself, I can't recommend it strongly enough, especially if you're into kind of realistic warts and all love stories about how ugly life and love can be. It's not a Hollywood romance. There's no, everything's fine and, here's a love montage and real life is not like that. Real life is scary and real life is filled with things you never saw coming, things that make you question and doubt everything. And people we love come in and out of our lives, and we suffer through deaths and we suffer through divorces and we suffer through all kinds of unimaginable things. But at the end of the day, life becomes, your ability to get up, dust yourself off, and move forward with the thought that there is still good out there. There is still happiness out there to be found. And Life Itself, for me, it was weird. In a lot of ways, it connected to me in a deeply personal way, perhaps more than it would for any of you. So maybe you wouldn't love it as much as I did. But it was eerie. It was eerie the way Fogelman tapped into certain things, and I'm like, were you following me around? I feel like I feel like the best movies and TV shows do that, where you're like, these writers must have been following me around. This is my life story. How did they do this? Or this character is just like me. But, there was this one thing about how like one decision made God knows how many years ago led to me being born. And it was a decision that was kind of frivolous and almost sort of accidental. Or maybe it was an ill-advised decision. You know, like I don't want to spoil the movie, but just to kind of let you know how it connected with me. You know, a couple of months ago, right there in that chair, for those of you watching the YouTube thing, right there in that chair stood my abuela. And then I sat in that chair next to her. And we had a rare, quiet afternoon to be able to just sort of talk and catch up and just kind of whatever. And, you know, she's always been, you know, my abuela, one of my very best friends. And when I was a lonely kid at the house, she was the one who would play Monopoly Junior with me and always let me win because she knew that Mario's lonely. She didn't need to let me win, by the way. Tata, if you're watching this, you could have taken a few of those. But yeah, she was always like just my friend and my support system and this beautiful person who symbolizes so much of the good in my life. And I realized, like, yeah, I've never really just kind of like sat with her. Hi, email. I've never really just sat with her and asked her story. And that day I sat there with her for like an hour or two, asking her, what was it like growing up in Cuba? What were your siblings like? You know, my grandparents were always, you know, for as long as I've been alive, they were divorced, you know, and so I've never known them together. And I always kind of got the sense that there was like, you know, issues there. Obviously there were issues. They got divorced. But I knew that there was like some core things on her mind about him. And so I kind of asked her like the scary questions. I was asking about like their courtship and what it was that she saw in him and when she knew that this wasn't going to work anymore and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, you know, we were just having like a very in-depth heart-to-heart. And, you know, what threw me for a loop was when I asked her about, like, why did you make the decision to go out with him? Because it doesn't seem like he was ever that nice to you. It didn't seem like you two had terribly much in common. You know, what was it that eventually made you and Mario, by the way, his name is Mario, he's who I'm named after. You know, what is it that made you and Abuelo Mario get together? And she told me, very frankly, you know, she was the youngest of 7 siblings. And the big running joke in the house all throughout her life was how ugly she was. They made made fun of her nose. They made her, you know, they would poke fun at how scrawny she was. They'd say she'd be lucky to get a good man one day. You know, they filled her head with all of these awful thoughts about herself and made her feel just ugly and kind of just like the runt of the litter. And then in came this Mario guy who, you know, he had this artistic background. He was a theater actor and writer and director and a poet. And sure, he was a bit of a jackass to her, but he was a good-looking guy. And when he came to pick her up, it made her feel special. It made her feel pretty. And it made her feel like, well, maybe my siblings and the people who were mean to me in grade school and my neighbors will stop treating me like I'm just this little runt if I'm on the arm of this, you know, gorgeous hunk of a man, and I can overlook the issues that we're having because this will, you know, in a way she was doing this to heal a lifelong wound. It wasn't out of love. It wasn't out of he treated her particularly fairly. It was not this love story. It was insecurity. The whole thing was motivated by insecurity. And it's crazy to think that she entered a marriage that took her on all these trials and tribulations, and she ended up getting a divorce and all this stuff. She went through a whole insane life. But without that insane life and that decision to marry a guy who she barely liked, but who she felt could somehow help heal her insecurities and the way she felt about herself, that gave way to my mother, which then gave way to me. So it's like, I remember that afternoon I was reeling, just thinking about all the different ways that story could have played out. And, you know, how her tragedy led to my life. And from tragedy came born a life that I'm very happy that I'm living now. And it's crazy to think, you know, and the movie Life itself, it plays with all those kinds of thoughts. It plays with that idea of the way your story evolves over time and who's the hero, who's the villain, who is this, a happy story or is this a tragic story? You know, life itself brought all that sort of stuff up to the forefront. And I'm still, 4 days later thinking about it, reeling from all that it had to say to me. And it had other stuff too. I don't want to get, this isn't a therapy session. It might have already kind of ventured into that territory personally, probably. But, it also connected to stuff with me, because listeners of this podcast know that, I've spoken in the past that at some point a few years back in 2015, I almost lost all of this. Everything that I love and hold dear, I almost blew and threw out the window. And one of the lessons I had to learn was how to make my wife feel my love in a good way. Because my love was becoming toxic. My love was becoming needy and bitter and angry and spiteful. And I was becoming not a good person to be around. And I was behaving in ways that were absolutely unfair to the life that we were building together. And I almost lost her. I almost lost all this. And I had to find out how to be a better person and how to sort of come back from the depths, because that really, that was me hitting bottom. And one of the ways that I got through that was through the song "Make You Feel My Love." It's a Bob Dylan song. And the words really stood out for me, because if you get a chance, listen to it, okay? But something I did back then, when I realized that my love was no longer a gift, but rather a weapon, was I asked my cousin Brandon, who, it was his birthday last week. I love you, Primo, and he writes for Revenge of the Fans. He's a beautiful person, and he's an unbelievably gifted guitarist. He's living in Florida. I sent him a cover of the song that was in the key that I liked, at the tempo that I liked. And he recorded just the instrumentation of that song and sent it up. He emailed it to me. Then I took that I took that backing track, and I got a microphone and I sang the song, and I recorded it for my wife without her knowing. And then the next day I put it in her CD deck with a little note that says "Play Me." I knew she'd listen to it on her way to work that day, and she heard my version of "Make You Feel My Love." And that was one of the gestures that I did to show her that I was ready to change and win her back and turn this whole thing around. And I bring that up because life itself, the main love theme is "Make You Feel My Love." And it's Bob Dylan, and it's the lyrics, and it's how that song is about. Like, it has multiple meanings. It's not just a schmaltzy love song. It's a schmaltzy love song on an album surrounded by tragic songs of heartbreak. And it shows how in the middle of all that, you could still find that way to love someone, and how to feel loved, and how to give love, even despite all of the fear and ugliness and uncertainty and all that you've lost and everything that you are so angry and confused about. In the middle of that, you can still feel loved, and you can still give love. So the movie, to me, was just like, it's beautiful. And if you love This Is Us, I know Aaron is going to be all up on that. I strongly recommend it. It's in theaters this weekend. It's going to be on Amazon Prime very soon, because it's an Amazon Studios movie. So it's one of those things where it's getting like a limited theatrical run, perhaps to qualify for awards. And then it's going to be on the streamer very soon. But I strongly recommend you check it out. There's a lot of meat on the bone there. And it really dug up a lot of stuff that I haven't thought about in a while. And reminded me, once again, of what my mission is. And my mission in this life that could be so chaotic and strange is to accept that life is chaos, but all I can do is be kind and move forward. And you know what's funny? I could have had Dan Fogelman on the show, on the Fanboy Podcast this week. I was very close, but ultimately his team didn't think there was enough of an upside for him. And, that's why it's so important that if you love this show, that you shout about it. Write reviews on Apple Podcasts, share links with your friends, spread the word about Revenge of the Fans, because the bigger this all gets, the easier it'll become to land amazing creators for insightful conversations on this here show. So, I didn't get Fogelman, But last month, I alerted you to a guest that I am getting. And I said it would be happening in September, and that's happening next week. I'll be speaking with Mr. Mark O'Connell. He's an accomplished author, and his new book, Searching Skies, Star Wars, Spielberg, and Us. It's a phenomenal book. Matt Vernier reviewed it on the site. We're going to have a great chat next week about the impact that pop culture has had on us and the impact we have on it. In fact, if you found what I've been talking about these last few minutes, or the stuff about, the collective dream and all that sort of stuff, like if you find all that stuff interesting, I think you're going to love the conversation I'm planning on having with Mr. O'Connell next week, right here on this very show, because he lived through the big pop culture boom of the mid-70s, when the world united, seemingly. Because the world came together over their obsession over blockbusters like Jaws and Star Wars and Superman and Indiana Jones and Back to the Future. Like, he lived through all that, and he has a unique perspective on the impact that the movies and pop culture entertainment have on us, on fans, and on how fandoms spring up and how we respond to these things and all this sort of stuff. So we're going to have a real great chat next week, Mr. Mark O'Connell and I. But all right, let's go ahead and wrap things up with some listener questions, rapid fire styley, and I will do my best. Let's see. Like I said, I don't always have something to say. So right now I'm going to run up and down the Twitter thread where I opened it up to you guys, and if I've got something to say, I will. If I don't, maybe next time. All right? I don't always have something to say. Matt, good supporter, Gold Coast Batman. Matt, he sent in a question about the DC Universe app. Will it be available, when will it be available internationally? Look, I'm not certain when that's going to happen. But I do have to say I've been hearing some concerning reports about the DC Universe app that, the initial subscription numbers are apparently way lower than they expected. So they got to figure something out. I don't know why they didn't launch it already with a bunch of original stuff to go, ready to go. I know they were trying to sync it up with Batman Day. And then there was that little kind of rumor I heard last week that one of the reasons they released it a couple of days even earlier than that was to kind of quiet everyone about the Henry Cavill Superman stuff. They were trying to cause a distraction. But overall, I'm hearing that the network is not off to a rollicking start. So if you are interested in getting it, I suggest get it now, because they're not. It sounds like they're going to discontinue it. I'm not saying get it now because it might go away, but get it now to show them that there's a strong interest. Because right now, the initial response has apparently been somewhat tepid. We're going to be having some DC Universe coverage on the site next week. Well, actually, we're not allowed to. I misspoke. But the week after next, we're going to have some exclusive reviews for you on Titans. They've sent me the screeners for that. I've got Matt Vernier, who's going to watch and review them. So, just keep that in mind, that the DC Universe Network apparently ain't doing so hot. So if you want to support it, get in there and support it. They could use it. That's what I hear. So, Matt, I don't know when they're going to go international. I just hope it's soon. They need all the help they can get, apparently. Katie from Wobam Entertainment. Hi, Katie. She said, more of an out there side of things. If Supergirl moves forward, does the CW show move off the air following previous precedent? No, I don't think it's going to happen. Right now, as long as the Supergirl show is still a success on the CW, I think they're more than happy to kind of go the model they were ready to go back in 2006, but didn't end up needing to. In terms of, they had Smallville going, and then they also had Superman Returns going. So in theory, you kind of had Superman in two different mediums. Yes, I know on one he was Clark and on one he was Superman, but in theory, had Smallville worked out, we would have had had Superman Returns worked out, we would have had two versions of Superman in pop culture, one on the TV, one in cinema. I'm pretty sure that's their plan for Supergirl here. As long as it's a hit, that show is going to keep on going. I don't see the movie interfering with that at all. Adam, who I spoke about earlier today, Adam said, which of the two female-led projects do you think goes into production first, Batgirl or Supergirl? It's going to be Supergirl. Everything I'm hearing is that Supergirl is getting fast-tracked. It's an absolute priority. I almost think it's going to be announced that it's filming next year after Batman. Because right now, remember, there is kind of like that open slot there. You know, right now they have Birds of Prey going in the winter. They have The Flash apparently happening in like the spring, assuming that all goes according to plan. And then it looks like Batman's going to do the summer. So they have a slot to film in like fall or winter, kind of like they're doing now with Joaquin Phoenix's Joker movie. I would not be at all surprised if Supergirl is the one that takes that spot, because they are apparently really, really excited about getting Supergirl out there. Supergirl out there. Brandon, who I just spoke about a few minutes ago and is probably... I hope I didn't TMI you, primo, but I really appreciate what you did. Brandon said, if Joker is successful, do you think that there is a world where we get two Jokers and two Batmans for the sake of exploring the different tones a comic book movie can portray on film? Though confusing at first glance, I can imagine a low-budget DC noir Earth working very well. Brandon, I don't know that the world is ready for that. I know us hardcore nerd types are, but I don't know if the studio gives credit that mainstream mass audiences are ready to accept two different cinematic Batmans, two different cinematic Jokers. That's a little much. You know, like I remember thinking it was weird when they wanted to make Justice League mortal while Christopher Nolan was still in the middle of making his Dark Knight trilogy, and it would have had Armie Hammer as Batman in a completely separate continuity. You know, I don't know that the world is quite ready to handle that. And that's it. You know, it works in the Arrowverse. It's more of a little niche audience. But for right now, for the kind of stuff that they're trying to establish in the cinematic DC universe, I don't see them doing that. That's why, as I said earlier in this episode, Joker is going to be its own standalone thing. It's going to be a one and done type of story. And I wouldn't expect any further continuation from that, or the idea of multiple Jokers running around at once. Then there's Mike. How you doing, Mike? Mike made a GIF out of me last week, by the way, where I apparently speak with my arms a lot. So let's see if I get another GIF this week. Mike said, does the fact that there will be a Suicide Squad 2 confirm that the current Batman in this universe is still Ben? Since he had a cameo in Suicide Squad 1. I can't imagine only Batman's getting rebooted while other characters in the same world remain unchanged. You know, Mike, that's a very good point. You know, Batman, Ben Affleck's Batman is already a fixture in the Suicide Squad continuity. So if they're continuing down that path with your Birds of Prey, with your Suicide Squad 2, and presumably Batgirl, which is written by the same people as Birds of Prey, so I'm expecting some synergy there. In theory, yes, you still need to have that older Batman presence, whether it's Ben Affleck or not. The current Batman should still be factoring into that story. And in that way, to sort of circle back to what Brandon said, that is a unique way I could see them having two different Batmans, but they're not two different Batmans, really. The Reeves will have the younger version, and if they do reference Batman in Suicide Squad 2 or in any of these other movies, it'll be understood that this is the older, current Batman. So it's just older and younger versions of the same version of Batman. So yes, Mike, I do think that, they have to sort of keep that Batman going. So yeah, I think you're right. I think this means that Ben Affleck's Batman remains canon. They're not doing a hard from scratch reboot. And in theory, the younger Reeves Batman grows into the Ben Affleck Batman. That seems to be kind of where they're heading now. But like I said before, things seem to fluctuate so much over there. It's hard for me to get particularly excited one way or the other. Gaz brought up, you once wrote that a good way to bookend the Reeves Batman with the current DCU would be to have Ben Affleck's Batman have flashbacks to an encounter he had with a foe 20 years earlier, which means a new actor could play a younger version. A lot of these questions are kind of similar, right? Do you think this foe could be Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, as a young Bruce Wayne is rumored to feature in his solo movie? Like I said earlier, Gaz, as cool as that sounds, and I know Mark Hughes mentioned a few months back that apparently an executive at Warner Brothers is curious about trying to make that happen. That's not the plan. Everything I've heard, including the stuff I'm not allowed to report, tells me that Joker is 100% on an island, not to interact at all with the Reeves Batman. Flash update. This comes from Terrafrayed. Right now, I don't have anything further than last week that they were looking for a casting director. I'm not sure if they nabbed one yet. But as far as I know, once they do, the casting process is going to begin. And they're still going to be filming next spring. I haven't heard anything that says that the film is off. I had my suspicions a couple weeks ago, but it seems to be that Flash is proceeding. Okay? Jack is asking, any hints, clues on who is the third man for Batman? So Jack, I guess you missed my Twitter update from Wednesday, but I mentioned on Wednesday that the elusive third man is seemingly not a thing anymore. And that's why I'm kind of glad I didn't report it. That's why I'm glad I didn't put it out there. We would have had another Kit Harington type situation where people were saying that this is a thing and it's not a thing. This other person, I found out, the long and short of it was, there was a producer super, super high on this guy. They were making preliminary inquiries, but then it just stopped there. The trail went cold. So he's another one that they were looking at, but the third man does not seem to be in place anymore. And I was asked to still continue to withhold the name because not many people know about it. And if I say it, it could potentially reveal who gave me that information, and I can get them in a lot of trouble. It's a very, very intimate circle of people who know about this third man, who even knew about the Kit Harington thing. If I told you where I was getting this stuff from, oh boy. But so the other person is no longer kind of a running mystery on this show. I'll reveal them perhaps in due time, but for now, the third man mystery has kind of been resolved because I hear he's no longer in the running, or that nothing came of it. So I'm sorry about that. So I wish that could have gone somewhere, and I wish this person actually got the job, but we'll talk about that in due time. Oh, I got a couple questions about Kevin and Toby, Kevin Tsujihara and Toby Emmerich visiting Ben Affleck. A lot of people thought that could be about Batman. Even I was like, I'm intrigued. What are they, these are two heavy hitters, two Hollywood titans who run one of the most, one of the biggest studios in the world. These guys don't just make house calls just for the heck of it. You know what I mean? If they're there, there's something very, very serious to discuss. So that's why I thought maybe it could be a Batman thing. But honestly, I don't know. My reporter, Jonathan Brady, pointed out that, Affleck has a few different things going on with Warner Brothers. He's not just Batman over there. He has other films he's working on. And apparently even in this next one, he has his film called The Has-Been coming out. And in The Has-Been, he plays an alcoholic. And apparently the thought on the street was they wanted to make a house call to speak to him to make sure he's comfortable with that, considering his personal trials and tribulations, the rehab stint that he's kind of still in the middle of. It seems like they wanted to find out, Ben, are you cool doing this? Should we recast you? Like, what is going on here? So it seems like they were just kind of showing just to kind of have his back and to make sure that he's good to kind of continue with the projects that he's currently lined up. I don't know, it would be nice to go that they struck some sort of 11th hour deal to keep him on as Batman. But for right now, that is not the only conclusion. That's not the only thing they could have been discussing. And right now, with everything I've heard, it sounds way more likely they were discussing something else rather than discussing Batman. So I'm sorry, but I don't think we're seeing Ben again. I want to see him, but I just get the sense we're not going to do it. Now, this one is more like, it's not even a question. Danny sent it as a question, but it just seems like a really neat idea. This guy, Danny, who, by the way, he submitted a Revenger submission to the site earlier this week. If you haven't seen it yet, I strongly recommend it. It was it was a nice piece about Superman. Danny said, if the Joker is successful, what other villains would you like to see get a film? And then here's the cool idea part. He said, I'd love to see a House of Luthor film with Sterling K. Brown tackling the role of Lex and Denzel playing his father. I mean, forget whatever idea I can come up with. That sounds amazing. Although it might work better as like a TV series. I'd love to see that play out over a while, not just 1 2-hour movie. If I had to guess, if there was a villain that I'd like to see get a solo movie on par, if Joker is good, I don't know. I kind of consider Lobo that. I would say, because Lobo is like that anti-hero bounty hunter type. He'd kind of be my way to go. I would kind of want his project to get sped up and to see a Lobo movie next. That would kind of be my thing. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question in all that satisfying a way, because he's not like a true blue villain. But, in terms of people who are not traditional heroes, my next interest would be in seeing Lobo. That's me. Tony asked the same question. How you doing, Tony? You the man. About Toby and Kevin visiting the Thing. He also did ask one additional question, though. He said, am I convinced that we've seen the last of Cavill's Superman? I'm not convinced of anything these days. I kind of have my own sort of summary for what I think happened last week. I think they had a bad meeting on Tuesday. I think on Wednesday, someone from the studio leaked to the Hollywood Reporter that they were moving on from him. I think Danny Garcia got a big wake-up call from that leak, spoke to someone at the studio. They apologized and said, we're going to get to the bottom of this leak. We're so sorry. We don't know how that got out, blah, 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 blah. So that's why she was like, oh, no, Warner Brothers, he's still Superman. Don't pay attention to that. But then Warner Brothers releases a statement that doesn't really say much, so it seems to me like there was some wiggle room created last week for the negotiations to continue, but that's kind of the holding pattern we're in now. I haven't heard anything about the negotiations actually continuing. And he seems to be gearing up to get ready for The Witcher, which starts in November. So I really, at this rate, it's starting to feel more and more like we're getting a Brandon Routh situation here, where they're not going to outright announce anything. They're not going to recast him. They're not going to announce a reboot. They're not going to fire him. They're simply just going to let his contract expire. And if that's the case, I said last week, this is a tragedy for Superman fans. I can't believe that we're in this place where there's a new Batman and Spider-Man every couple of years, but Superman forever, whatever reason, we keep on having to go back to the drawing board. But that does seem to be where we're headed. And that's kind of all I have to say about Cavill and Superman at this time. If I get any other information on that, Tony, I'll let you guys know. But for right now, the radio silence that is coming from those camps, it really just feels like that's a wrap, and they're just going to kind of quietly let Henry Cavill's contract expire in a couple years, and then we'll get to a Superman movie with a new actor. It is what it is. Danny Ortiz was just asking for general DC bochinche news. I kind of gave you all that already, Danny. Then the guy Not Necessary, who his actual Twitter handle is @KidFate. Kid Fate asks, odds of Joker appearing in Birds of Prey, even just a cameo. I don't think we're going to see him. Jared Leto's Joker has, I think for the time being is on ice. Right now, next year around, he's going to be working on Morbius for Sony. I'd be shocked if he also pops up as Joker in Birds of Prey or possibly for Suicide Squad 2. But again, that's a ways off. So I don't think, I think we may get like vocal, spoken references to him. But right now it seems like they want to keep the focus on their new characters, on their Birds of Prey and their Harley Quinn, because they know that worked. And right now with Walter Hamada trying to do more than anything is to emphasize what worked and de-emphasize what didn't work. And Jared Leto's Joker, by and large, was rejected by the mainstream. People didn't like what was there, which, by the way, is a tragedy because we didn't even get to really see him. They cut like 90% of his screen time, so we don't even know what performance, what a gift he might have given us. But regardless, what we did see, the mainstream was not enthused about. So I do not see Walter Hamada trying to get him into that movie unless for whatever reason, Kathy Yan is dying to get him in there. I don't think we're seeing Jared Leto's Joker anytime soon. All right, and Batboat, I answered your question towards the beginning of the show. So you know where I stand in terms of, does Warner Brothers have a point in putting Superman sort of on pause for now? No, I don't think they do. They just haven't done it right. They haven't made a Superman that we can fall in love with just yet, not in a long time. So if they're going to go and try to peg this on Superman, they are lost. But, all right, I think that about does it. Thank you for watching episode 73 of the Fanboy Podcast. Until next week, life is chaos. Be kind. Adios.